Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful sunny day. My name's Lena, and I will be conducting the webinar today on Report Writer. Out of all the webinars that I do, this is definitely the most loved, so I'm very excited today to share my knowledge with you. Some of you joining have already converted to iSolve from our legacy payroll platform, CyberPay, but some are still on CyberPay. So please note that this webinar does cover iSolved functionality only. If you're not on iSolved and you'd like to convert, please reach out to your client service representative. All of you participants have been placed in listen-only mode, so I won't be able to hear you if you speak, but questions are welcome throughout the webinar, and I'll try to get to as many as possible at the end. So our agenda today will be to look at iSolved's reporting functionality and then learn how to use iSolved's powerful report writer. I'll follow this up with a question and answer session at the end. So, all right, so let's get started. So we're going to take a look at the reporting options available in iSolved. So everybody who is in business knows how important it is to have lots of reporting options. So let's take a look to start by going to the Reporting tab, and let's take a look at our report archive. So the first thing that we see under reporting is Report Archive. And up here at the top, you can choose between your legal companies. So if you have more than one legal company, you could choose which one that you wanted to run or that you wanted to see reports for. And you could also choose between pay groups. So if you wanted to work within just this biweekly pay group or salary pay group, you could choose the pay groups there. And these are all the reports that we have set up to run with each payroll. So we can see here that we have had one regular payroll, and the pay date is in my demo org is tomorrow. And all of these reports have been generated for that payroll. So if we wanted to, we could view the reports by just simply selecting what report we want and then clicking View Report, which is pretty intuitive. And it pulls up this is a payroll summary, so it pulled up a nice PDF of the payroll summary. So this is a nice way. So if you have like reports that you need to run every single payroll, setting up reports to be in your report archive is a great way to do that so that you can just download PDF copies every time. But let's say we have a situation where you want to check your a report before you process your payroll. So let's say we want to check our leave accruals report prior to processing our payroll. How can we add that to this report archive so that we can do that? So what we would do is we would go to Scheduled Report Options, and that's under Client Management, Client Maintenance, and Scheduled Report Options. And we can see that we have scheduled all of these reports to run every pay. So in order to add a report, I would come over here to Add New and choose my payroll report. Now there's three different options that you have. You can choose between all the payroll reports that you have available. You can choose from report writer reports that might be available to you. And you can choose date range reports, but it's important to note that when you're setting up a report to be run with every pay, that date range reports are not available. So you can't set up the date range ones to run with every pay. So let's just pick our leave accruals report because we may want to check what our leave accruals are going to be. Let's see here, right here. And then we have the option, and this is always nice, is to sort. So we can choose more than one sort field. And just to go over what a field is, it's just a value, but iSolve calls them fields. So we want to choose our sort field. Let's say we want it to be last name first, but we also want to sort by department. So we're going to have a report, a leave accruals report that sorts by last name and then also sorts by, actually, let's make it the other way. Let's make it sorts by department first and then last name within those departments. Perfect. And down here we have the option to schedule how often we want to see this report be run. So most often my clients, they would choose every pay, but you could choose to only see it on the first and second pay of the month. You have all these options to choose from. So whatever your like last pay of the year is even on there. Let's just keep it every pay. And let's see here. Let's hit save. And down here at the bottom, report group access. This section is if you want this report to be in a report group, you could include it in either or any of the report groups that you have set up. However, if you leave these options unchecked, it will be, this leave accruals report will be available to anybody who has access to run payroll. So if you want everybody to have access to it, you would not check any of the boxes. But if you wanted it to be included, let's say we set up a report group called payroll, like managers only, and selected the checkbox managers only, then it would restrict who had access to those reports. All right, so now we have added our leave accruals report to our scheduled report options to be run for every pay. In order to preview this, we would go to our process payroll and preview payroll. And the act of hitting preview payroll generates all the reports that we have scheduled. So we can actually, from this dropdown, see by hitting go what our leave accruals report looks like for our upcoming payroll. And we only have one employee who has accrued anything, so it's a fairly limited report, but in my demo, but in your company, you may have much more data. So that is how you would set up a report to be able to preview it before you run your payroll. And it's also how you would add a scheduled report into your report archive. So let's take a look at our report writer. So down here, reporting, report writer is our second option. And what is report writer? Well, it's a quick and efficient way for creating reports, and it can also be a very powerful tool for creating complex reports and exports. A report being a PDF and an export being an Excel or a CSV file. We're going to walk through how to use this tool together. So report type here, actually let's click add new here. And report type is probably the most important part of report writer to start, because this defines what tables or set of data that is available for you to pull data from. So the report type selected dictates the tables available for reporting, the tabs available for running reports, and whether or not a report can be scheduled. I'm going to briefly discuss the 4 most common report types. And in our university, you can find a report writer guide that will go through the details of every report type. So let's start actually with the most common. It's payroll employee summary report. So this type of report has a single row of data for each employee. So that means the data is summarized for each employee. Reports can be generated for an as-of date or a specific payroll run. So if you're looking to have a summary report that is going to be run for every pay or as of a certain date, you would use this as a template, the payroll employee summary report. The second most commonly used is this payroll check detail report. This type of report has a single row of data for each check the employee has had for that payroll selected for the report. So reports can be generated for an as of date or a specific payroll run. So if you have an employee who has multiple checks in the same pay period and you're looking for a way to sort out their checks or their pay, this is the best report to use for that purpose. A date range report, which is an extremely important report template. This type of report has multiple rows of data for each employee. So one row of data per payroll run within the date range for each employee. So it doesn't summarize it, but it has one row for each pay within whatever date range that you choose to work within. And then the last one would be the HR report. So this type of report is designed to pull in data from HR tables where there can be multiple rows per employee. So you can use that one to generate as of dates from the company tab. So those are the four most common report types that we have. And today we're going to be building a basic 401k upload for our 401k provider. So let's say we have just started, we have set up a 401k and we want to submit contributions online. And if you guys know anything about that, you have a specific file template that you have to adhere to, or else you won't be able to upload your data. Well, in Report Writer, we can set up our fields or data to export in exactly the way that we need it to upload, making creating files in iSolved easy so that you can just take the file and just upload it with no hassle. So what would we want? We would want a payroll summary report that we can set up to run for every pay. So I know that we're going to choose the type payroll employee summary report. And we're going to call it whatever we want to call it. Let's just call it 401k upload. I like to make my font size a little bit bigger, even bigger, 12. And you can even specify your font, which is awesome. You can specify what orientation, portrait, or landscape you'd like the report to output in. If you want to add it to a report group, you can. I'm just going to add it to my default report group. And we can add a description. This report will be used to upload to our contribution site. Down here in our CSV options page, we can specify a delimiter. What a delimiter is it is a character that separates text. So I'm sure you're all familiar with comma separated values. You could choose comma, tab, a tab delimited, or you can even choose custom. If you leave it blank, however, it's going to give you the option of exporting an Excel or a PDF. So we're going to leave it blank because we don't really need to specify the delimiter, and we don't need to specify that it's going to be a CSV. If your 401k contribution site required a CSV, this is where you would define that. And then if you're working within the CSV or even a fixed file, you can choose to add as many headers here as you would like. Since we're going to work in essentially an Excel spreadsheet, or we're building an Excel file, it's going to automatically have 2 header rows, and we can choose whether or not we want to leave those in our file, and I'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes. All right, so once we click Save on our blue action bar, all the lovely tabs with all of our options pop up, and we're going to go ahead and start building this 401k upload. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to hit the Add Columns tab. And we have a list of fields or a list of data that we want to pull from our payroll system. So we're going to click Edit. And the easiest way to do this, if you already know what data you're looking for, is to use the search. Otherwise, you can look at all of the data that's available in these tables. So this payroll summary report has the employee data table available to it, employee organization and labor table, employee pay table, etc., all the way down. And if I were to take a look in employee data table, I could see we have already some things that we know we're going to need, such as address. We have age available to us, birth date, a whole lot of data. And also, we already have some fields that iSolved automatically puts into every single report that we write. So it automatically will put in a location code, department code, employee number, and employee name. Well, I know that I don't want any of this data in my 401k upload. With we do want employee name, but we want it in a little bit of a different format. So I can just choose one and move it back with the arrows, or I can choose all the data at the same time and just move it out of my report. So these are our available columns, and then these are our added columns. So right now we have a blank report. So let's search for some fields to add. I know that we are going to need our social security numbers. So I typed SSN and it gives us 3 options. We could have the whole social security number. We could have a masked social security number, which only shows you the last 4 digits. Or we could have a social security number with no dashes. A lot of times the 401k sites won't let you have dashes, so we're just going to go ahead and choose that one. Of course, your format, your file template would tell you. We want the employee name, but we want last name and first name to be separate. So I chose last name and moved it over. I'm also going to, as we can see, it tells us what table it's in. I'm going to choose the employee first name and move it over. We also are going to want their address. So when I click address, a lot of address fields pop up. So I know that I want address 1 and 2, and I can, as you can see, I can select more than one at the same time and move them over. And I know I want my city. And my state. And oh, wow, it gives us military state, code, name. So we know we want state abbreviation. Essentially what I'm doing right now is we are building the report, and I think it's user-friendly just selecting and moving over. And then we also want our zip code. So let's choose our zip. And we want a few things that are not going to be just regular employee data. So we want let's see, status. So active or terminated. So it might be employment status. It might be, see how marital status pulls up. I'm just going to choose status. We want our hire date. It comes up with hire date, original hire date, and rehire date, which is nice if you have if you are rehiring employees a lot. I want date of birth. So if I put date of birth, oh, nothing popped up. So what table might that be in? I think it is just in employee data. Oh, it's birth date. That makes sense. Let's move that over. And we want our gross pay. Now, if I stay within this table, it's not going to pull up anything. So we actually want to go out of the table, and now a whole bunch of gross wages columns pull up? Well, I think we're going to need our current gross pay, and I think we're also going to need our year-to-date wages. So I pulled both of those columns over. And then, of course, we're going to need our contributions. So 401k, it gives you many fields to choose from. We are working within a deduction accumulation, and we want it to be 401k current because that is the current withholding from the employee's paycheck. So we're going to pull that over, and then maybe your company has a match. So we're going to pull 401k match current dollars over. All right, so now we have a pretty lengthy report here that we have built. And let's say we have all the data here, but we want to reorganize it. Let's say we don't really need status way up here right by the address. You can actually hold the field or select the field, and then with these arrows, you can toggle it up or down. So let's make status our very last. All right, well, that looks good. Now we'll hit save to commit the fields to the report, and we'll move on to the editing stage of Report Writer. So if I hit the Edit Columns button, it's going to show me that I have all of these columns in these positions. So the very first column is Social Security number all the way down. I have our heading column 1 and our heading column 2. So right now, Social Security number only has a blank header 1, but SSN for header 2. And I have my width, which you can adjust up and down. Or actually, I just sorted that. You can adjust it over here. So let's actually sort by, there we go, by column. And over here, if you select each column, you can edit the data in each column. So if I wanted to add a header into Social Security number, I could add Social Security number. And now we have changed the header, both of the headers for Social Security number. I could change the column position by I can make, instead of column 1, I can make Social Security number column 2. We're going to leave it as column 1. I could format with Social Security number, since we chose no dashes, we don't want to format it. And I can choose even my column alignment, whether you want it left, right, or center. Let's see, there's lots of specific formatting that you can do. You can get it down to how many characters that you want to pad it, 3 characters. Most of the time we leave these empty. And let's save this, and let's go to our employee last name. And let's edit that column because we want to make our last name our sort position 1. So that means that our report is going to sort by last name. Let's save that. And what are some of the pieces of data that we might want to format for a 401k upload? Well, I would say maybe hire date. So if we click edit, let's see the format string or the format type of options that we have to edit this date. We have just 6/15/2009, or so basically month/date/year. Or we could choose 06/15 year. We could choose the text version. I think I see most often this day, month, year. So let's save that. And then let's say we also want to make it so that we don't have commas in our decimals. So let's edit this. And down here, our format string, we can choose a number for options, or choose an option for numbers that does not include our comma. So let's just choose the option that removes the comma. Also down here, you can see that we have this aggregate sum function. What this is this is going to tell your file or Excel to give you a total. Now, some people like to leave the sum function. It will do this for every dollar amount, every number that you have in your every column that has numbers in it will have an aggregate sum function automatically. Some people like to leave it in because you can see your total and then you don't have to use any functions in Excel. If you wanted to take it out, you could simply select the blank space above the functions. But I'm going to leave it in because at the end, after we take a look at our Excel report, we can just delete that row. And it's just a nice way for us to check our totals. So let's hit save. And let's go ahead and make sure all of the dollar amounts have no commas. So our 401k amount, hit edit, remove our comma. All right. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive into what you can possibly do with columns in Report Writer. Nobody get scared. You certainly don't have to do this, but I'm just going to show you, you have the option of doing some pretty cool things. So let's say we actually have to build a column that we don't have anything in iSolved for us to be able to pull. Let's say we're going to try to, our 401k company requires an eligibility date for the 401k plan. Well, let's say we only have hire date available in iSolved. So what we can do is if we haven't gone through and assigned an eligibility date in iSolved to every single employee, we can build a calculated column that points to the data in our column and says, I want to reference this data to build a new value. So what a calculated column is it does exactly that. It looks to the data and it has a function that it uses the data for. So using a calculated text column or a numeric column, it's easy to create an if statement that can be used to create a conditional result, such as an if statement that evaluates a condition to produce different results depending on whether the condition is true or false. Or you can simply reference a value in your column and build off of that. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to build the conditional statement, but we are going to build an eligibility date field. So up here, we can say, let's add new. And under field categories, we have the option here of adding a new column in right in this Edit Columns tab. So I'm going to choose Calculated Column and Text option. And it gives us a header of Calculated Field automatically. And it puts our column position at the very end. So right now we have this calculated column, but we have nothing in our expression. So we're going to build an expression together. So what we want to do is we are going to we want a formula or a function that can add 180 dates to our hire date. So we're going to use this function that you can find in iSolved's University called dateAdd. And essentially, the D here is a character that says to look at the date in hire date. 180 is the value of days that we're going to add to the hire date. And then, of course, we have to tell it what column to reference. So by hitting the column, it opens up all the columns that we have available. And we're going to double-click on hire date to insert the handle for hire date. In order to close our function, we have to put a closing parentheses. And there it is. Here's our expression that we've built. Again, this D stands for date. So if I changed it to M, it would look to month. So we could add 180 months. If I changed it to Y, it would look to year. So it could add 180 years. But we're going to stick with adding 180 days to the hire date. So let's choose OK and save. Perfect. Let's also edit the heading so it doesn't say calculated field, but rather says eligibility date. All right, so when we finally look at our output, we're going to look at this eligibility date calculated column that we just created. One of the last things we're going to do is build a report filter. So let's say we only want active employees to be included in this upload file. So let's click Add New here, and we can create a report filter that will say to iSolved, only include employees with the status of active. So how I did that was I chose my column that I want the filter to be built on. You only have two options. One is for in or not in, which essentially means of, and you can include what criteria by grabbing the active and moving it over. So let's hit save. So now I have this report with a report filter of status. Status is active. All right, it's time to look at our final results. So we can either preview by different legal companies and an as of date, or we can preview by payroll. And since this is a 401k file upload, I think we want to look at it for just one pay period. So let's choose our pay period. And in this case, I'm going to choose the most recent pay period. And let's change our output type to Excel. Up here in the blue action bar, I can click Generate Report. And in order to view the results, you can go to the Reports queue, My Reports queue. So let's click on it. I got a whole list of reports that I've generated in the past. This most recent one at the top says 401k uploaded. And I want to just click View Report. And now it prompts me to save my Excel file. And then down here at the bottom, even though it spins and spins, when you make an Excel file, we're not going to install that now. It will just pull up the Excel file and you just have to click it to open. And let's take a look at this report that we have built. All right. So I have to expand these so I can actually see the values. We have our social security number with no dashes, our employee last name and first name, all the address information that we added into the report. We have our hire date, our birth date, our current gross wages, the year-to-date gross wages, which aren't any different because I've only run one payroll in my demo company, and then also our current 401k dollars and match. We have a status that's active, and we have our eligibility date. So if we look very carefully, we can see that this eligibility date is 180 days after this person's hire date. And that is true for every employee. So it's kind of neat what you can do with a little bit of code. And down here at the bottom, we have our aggregate sum function. So it just totals our gross wages. In order to remove that, we can select it from Excel and delete. or not. You could leave it in, but most 401k reports wouldn't let you do that. Now, let's say we want to make one minor alteration. Let's say we don't want to see the status column, but we needed to include it in our file in order to make that filter of only active employees being included in the file. So let's go back to iSolved and let's go back to our report writer. And let's go to edit columns. Oh, we have to choose the right one. All right, and edit columns, and let's find our status column. It's right here. iSolved has this lovely thing where we can edit this, check hidden column, save it, and now it disappears from our report. So that is lovely. Many times you'll even have it, so let's say you're building an eligibility date column and you don't need this hire date column at all. You can hide that as well. And your eligibility date column will still show in your report. So that was a quick tutorial about the basics of using Report Writer. Does anybody have any questions? And I am looking at my chat, and if you do think of questions later, feel free to chat me. I know it's a lot of information to absorb. But as you can see, iSolved's Report Writer is powerful. It's easy to use. You can make it as easy or complex as you need it to be. So that's an awesome thing, is the more that you put into it, the more that it will give you back. I do have one question coming in. It says, can supervisors be set up to use Report Writer? And the answer, And the answer to that, oh, I have more than one. Okay. The answer to that is yes, you can give your supervisors access to use the report writer, and you can even limit their access down to the pay group. So if you have multiple pay groups, one for staff and one for managers, we can help you set it up so that only your supervisor can only run report writer or create report writers on the data for the staff payroll and not for the manager data. And I have another one. To review, adding a report to scheduled reports makes it available in the payroll preview. Oh, and you can go back to your scheduled, wow, I cannot remember it right now. Scheduled, there we go, report options, and add this report it will show up here in your report writer reports. So that is how you would add it to run for every payroll. All right, anything else? It looks like we're good. Okay, well, thank you so much for attending my webinar today on Report Writer. I hope you all learned a lot. And I will be sending out a schedule for July's iSolved webinars. If you have topics that you're interested in, go ahead and send me suggestions. Again, my name is Lena, and I will be more than happy to take those into consideration when putting together the next group of webinars. Have a great day, everybody.